Confessions from people you pass on the street every day.
I have used methods to convince men to sleep with me that would be predatory if roles were reversed. I am a woman in my 30s. In my 20s I was extremely insecure and had a very low sense of self-worth. I was shy, but when I started going to bars and drinking, inhibitions were very much lowered. Having a man attracted to me was an unhealthy way of validating my self-worth. I know I have encouraged guys to get drunk so they would want to have sex with me. I have coerced men to sleep with me using my body or basically throwing myself at them. There is not much I wouldn't do to get the guy I had in mind to want me. With the Me Too movement and the conversations around it, I realized that if I was a man, my actions could have been considered predatory and potentially non-consensual because of intoxication. When I think about it, I feel very ashamed of myself. I have lightly broached discussing this subject with male friends and they laugh it off like it is no big deal, but I can't help feeling guilty because the fact that I am a woman somehow makes it okay with society. I am embarrassed by my past behavior and I am afraid to discuss it in real life because either I won't be taken seriously or there's a small chance I could be taken very seriously, and who knows what could happen. I know I am not the only woman to have behaved this way, but no one seems to talk about it. I guess I am posting this here to anonymously get some feedback and opinions. I let the wrong men go to jail. When I was younger, I lived in a very bad household. There was drama, abuse, drugs, affairs, lies, anything you could possibly think of. Me and all of my siblings are a few years apart, which means my mom left my biological father when I was 7 and my brother was a newborn while my older brother was 15. We were homeless, we didn't have much, we eventually got our own house. My older brother would slip into my room and molest me. He would tell me to count how many times he thrust into me because I begged him only to do it a few times. I hated it. I remember being so confused and he told me it's what all siblings do. I knew it wasn't, but I was also 7. When I was 8 we went to go visit my dad. My brother forced me to touch him and do very bad things there too, no one ever knew. Or maybe they did and didn't care. Fast forward a few years, I'm 13, he asked me if I could pose for him. I said no. He then pushed me into the laundry room and forced me on my knees. You can imagine what happened then. At this time my mother was dating a man. He was extremely weird and wanted to be close to me. He would let me drink, smoke, cuss, whatever. He never molested me though. My biological dad blamed my bad attitude, how I dressed, how I was so sad, suicidal and angry at age 14. How could someone so young be so angry? He blamed it on my stepdad. He said he believed he was the one who was touching me. My entire life I was taught my older brother could do no wrong. He was the golden child. He was the favorite. I was so scared to say anything because I knew they wouldn't believe me. My father asked me if my stepdad had raped me because I had developed tears inside of me. It was so painful. I said yes just to get him to stop trying to blame everyone. That night my stepdad was arrested. He spent a year in jail but didn't get put on the registry. When I was 17, my mom was talking about her rape experience. She said it was from her brother. She said if she ever found out my brother had been molesting me, she would kill him. Why would I tell you if I know there's going to be such a bad outcome? I've lived with this my entire life. I slipped up and told my ex-girlfriend when I was drunk. All she did was reassure me that it was okay. I then threw up everywhere because I know it'll never be okay and this is forever. I drank too much with our most important client. I was out after a meeting with our most important client. There were lots of drinks being shared between our team and theirs, but I ended up being one of the last 2 people there. I'm so embarrassed because I don't fully remember the end of the night. I have not been contacted by work. Happened 2 days ago of any incident, nor the client, but my anxiety is through the roof and my heart has been racing all day. Their VP actually friended me on LinkedIn the following night, so I would like to take that as a comforting sign, but my mind keeps going to the worst places. How do I get myself into that position, and what if for some reason I get fired? I feel like this could end my career. If you're reading this, thanks for listening. I needed to write this out and get it off my chest. I have a really bad shoplifting issue. A guy I was dating in high school got me started. Be random stuff that neither of us needed and was just an adrenaline rush. Now 5 years later, it is extremely rare for me to go to any store without stealing something. It ranges from me sticking a bottle of body wash into my bag to me stuffing my purse as full as I can get it with actual produce/groceries/clothes. I don't see it as an adrenaline rush anymore at all. I know eventually I'm going to get caught, but it's just become habitual at this point. I purposely fractured my little sister's neck with a punch. I have never gotten along with my little sister, but I wouldn't say I hate her. I am 15 years old and she is 10. We have always fought, but never like last week. I don't even remember what she told me exactly, something like I was too ugly, one of her typical jokes. I was so angry that I could only think of killing her, literally. I hit her on the side of the head with all my strength, causing her a broken neck. I lied to my parents and told them that my sister had hurt herself doing backflips, that she was lying. They believed me because my sister is always doing gymnastic stuff, even when told that it is dangerous. I'm scared. I don't even know what happened to me. I went crazy. I snapped. I don't recognize myself lately. I have memory losses and I feel like I don't control my own body. I am afraid of what I could do. I do not know what is happening to me and I am really scared. Throw away and excuse my English. I stabbed a kid in the back with scissors when I was 10. I was bullied a lot as a kid. The only way I ever knew how to handle it back then was to retaliate by screaming or doing something much worse to them instead. It doesn't excuse what I did, however, I did it with no thought and regretted it immediately. It was the last period of the day. Our subject was art and I was trying to draw, but the kid next to me kept grabbing my sketchbook. I went to the teacher 2 times and each time he would place it on my desk before I'd reach the teacher, as if to pretend he never took it in the first place. I had enough eventually, and my first reaction was to grab a pair of scissors that were on my table and stab him in the back. He immediately cried and went to the teacher. The teacher had asked me what was wrong with me and I plainly answered. He took my book and wouldn't return it. Back a bit and returned to my desk and noticed the crowd of students and the teacher looking at me in shock and disappointment. In the midst of it, I had regretted it immediately and was angry at myself for doing something so stupid. I'm not sure how bad he was hit, but it wasn't mentioned at all, and I was just told to pay for his punctured coat, which lessened the impact. I had lost all my friends, and I was seen as a bad person, all because I couldn't control myself, which does sum up my childhood very well. I wish I could have actually apologized to him, but I realize I'll never see him again in my life. Destroyed the school sprinkler, costing the school tens of thousands of dollars. I was at school and it was PE and we were indoors playing soccer in the gym and I didn't like soccer. So I was off the side hitting a volleyball. I spiked the volleyball super hard onto the floor and it went up and hit the sprinklers. All the sprinklers went off, flooding the school, ruining everything. It cost tens of thousands of dollars, I think. I ruined the school. No one will know it's me except for the millions of strangers on Reddit. TLDR, I hit the school sprinkler with a ball, causing all sprinklers to go off, destroying the school. Pretty sure I caused a little old lady to kick the bucket. So one summer, maybe 10 years ago, I decided to take a construction-type job as a roofer. One woman that I took a job from was confined to her bed most of the time. She had coughed or something because she could barely move. Amazing old lady. I insisted on holding my hand and praying for my soul every day I was there, a long job. Like sweetest grandmother type. Anyway, one day in the middle of the job there's a huge thunderstorm, so I put a tarp on the roof really quick and hop inside hoping it will blow over. But I didn't put the tarp on well, apparently, because 5 minutes later all this water starts pouring into the house from all over. Her grandkids that live with her are running screeching everywhere. Her daughter gets some buckets and I go back on the roof, but the damage has been done. The grandmother's room is ruined. I call in a favor from one of my buddies and a week later he comes by and replasters her room, which took the worst of it. But they had to move her from the bed to the couch and you can tell she's in a lot of pain even though she doesn't say anything. I finished the job, but about a month later I get a text. Grandmother's dead. I just feel awful that I caused her to die and can't remember for the life of me if I actually got the edge of the tarp down with one more nail, which would have averted the whole thing. To top it all off, shortly after her mother died, the daughter started drinking again. She had been sober for a year until right after her mother died. Thanks for listening. I copy people's house keys without their knowledge. I think it comes from when my parents would lock me out as a punishment by changing the house passcode when I was little, or from being housing insecure when I was 19/20. I'm 21 now, but I have a distinct fear of being locked out/losing access to places. Almost any time I move, change jobs, if there are keys involved, even desk keys, or someone lends me their house keys, I make a copy of any keys that can be copied and don't tell anyone. I rationally know it's a breach of trust, but I don't use the copies with rare exceptions. Person asks me to lock up sans key as I'm the last person leaving and I realize I've left something inside, so not trespassing, just to get back in after accidentally locking myself out of somewhere I'm allowed to be. My boyfriend said he'd leave the door unlocked for me to come to sleep over after work the other day. I couldn't move into my new place until the 1st of February, but his roommate accidentally locked the door back up and by the time I got there my boyfriend was already asleep and not answering his phone. We've been dating for a year, but I was too scared of getting caught having copied his key, which was in a bag in my glove compartment in my car, so I just left him a voicemail. And I cried harder because today he and his roommate, who I've known for several months now, went and got a key copied for me of their own accord so that I'm never locked out of their place again. I already had a copy and technical access, but having someone actually want me to keep having access meant a lot. Anyway, I can't explain it to anyone without sounding like a burglar. At one of the times my father locked me out when I was 14, I was assaulted, and it happened again when I was 19, and the guy I was staying with at the time locked me out. I have been to therapy through my college, but I didn't find it very helpful, and it was limited to 3 sessions per full-time semester anyway. I can't fully afford to go back to therapy, though my boyfriend did offer to help me pay for it. He's older and makes a lot more than I do and could afford it, but I don't know about making him take on any of that financial burden. I'm a pretty private person outside of Reddit confessions, and he thinks I only need therapy for anorexia. My fear is of losing access to shelter by It's not rational, but it's also not really about the person either. It definitely helps that I now have a car I can lock myself in. Just I want feeling like I have to copy all keys and even to eventually destroy the copies I have. I don't know that I can do that just yet. But obviously I know it's creepy or this wouldn't be a Reddit confession. I've made a lot of money selling 25-cent medical face masks overseas at $3 per mask. Coronavirus was brought to my attention and I saw an opportunity to make money. I'm a broke 20-year-old and just wanted to see if it'd work, just to make a quick $100. I hit $100 profit in an insanely short amount of time and have accumulated way more than I should have. I bit someone's finger off. I was drunk. I was alone and separated from my friends. I got into a fight with a group of random dudes who tried jumping me and bit at least one of their fingers off. I found a piece of finger stuffed in my front pants pocket the next day. Duck that dude, I don't feel bad at all. Edit, I've been tested, I'm good. I quit drinking a few months after this incident because it seemed like every time I went out with friends something crazy would jump off. Been sober almost 2 years now, pretty happy about that. I stole a piece of the Space Shuttle's thruster module. While visiting the Kennedy Space Center with my family, I noticed an orange knob on one of the thruster modules on display. I reached out to turn it and discovered it was actually a cap for some kind of plug socket. Realizing the gravity of the discovery, I unscrewed the cap and swiftly put it in my pocket. The small aluminum cap now lives on my nightstand. Once made a kid drink my urine. It was snack time at church. We had cookies and Mountain Dew. The older kids dared me to pee in a cup and give it to Eric. I was dumb and eager to impress and belong. We were young, maybe 8. Eric was a bit of a bully, but I was no better. I wish I had the courage to be my own man. I still wish it. I'm sorry, Eric. When I was at school, I spent the whole term dripping white correction fluid into the blazer pocket of the boy sitting next to me in maths. One day we were in the changing rooms for PE, and he put his hand in his blazer pocket and came out with this slimy, congealed cake of dry Tipex all over his fingers. He then noticed it had stained all down the outside of the pocket also. His school uniform blazer was ruined and he was absolutely bollocked by his parents, who had to buy him a new one. Later I found out that he came from a poor family and they really couldn't afford this, as our uniforms were a funny color, green and red, absolutely as hideous as they sound, and had to be bought from only one outlet connected to the school, which was a state school but had a very good reputation. They never found out it was me. Sorry, mate. Edit, clearly I know it was a bad thing to do, that's why I made this post. Isn't that the point of this sub? I was 13 and I honestly thought it would just wash out. I never really saw the damage it was doing to the fabric. Even at the time I felt bad about it. The stain on the outside of the pocket looked like semen, and for a while some other boys called him cum stained. But nobody noticed it, not me, not him, not the other boys, and not his parents, until he dipped his hand in there. I was a kid, it was 30 years ago, but I'm still sorry. I got my whole class of 20+ students 2 hours of detention. This was in high school during German class a few years ago. It was taught by an intern teacher, and she was still new and was teaching us for a couple of weeks. As she was still learning to become a full-time teacher, her time teaching us was quite rough, as we were a pretty hectic class with quite a few troublemakers. Most classmates didn't like her for the way she taught, and that's why the mood during her classes was often tense. So I sat at the front of the class with around 20 classmates next to and behind me. We were all at our tables and had to write stuff down. The teacher was writing on the board in front of us, so she had her back turned to the class. I was attentively following along, writing her notes down, and I had this excess of quick dry white out on my table. I curled it into a little ball, and through what I can only describe as pure impulsiveness and without any intentions, I threw the little ball of white out a few meters in front of me. It accidentally landed perfectly on the teacher's head when she had her back turned while writing German words on the board. She immediately turned around within the second and demanded who it was who threw it at her. It was stuck there for a few seconds too. Because of her tone, I was actually scared to come forward for something I didn't mean to do. And to my absolute surprise, despite being in front of the class within everybody's line of sight, nobody saw me doing it. Everyone had their eyes fixed on their papers or something else. It didn't occur to anyone that I could have done it because I was closest to her. Because nobody came forward, there was this whole ensuing debate between all the classmates about who could have done it, lasting like 20 minutes while I just kept my mouth shut. That's because the teacher threatened that because enough was enough, if nobody came forward, the whole class was going to get attention. Because I was generally a quiet kid and never made a fuss with the teacher, I guess I was overlooked. People were blaming each other, and those who didn't get along were shouting and accusing, and our hectic class became even more hectic. Nobody saw me doing it, and I was one big prick for staying quiet, I know. I feared that even if I came forward and by saying it was an accident, I was not going to get believed, and my punishment for doing it would be even harsher. Especially since I kept quiet longer and longer and let everybody accuse each other. In the end, a whole class of around 20 kids was all sent to detention for about 2 hours that week because she believed the whole class was against her at that point. She had used that moment as the final straw in an increasingly tense mood between her and most of the class. A few months after it had died out, I admitted my guilt to some of my closest friends from that class, and we just laughed about after, although they were angry too. Most from that class won't ever know it was me.